So the iPhone 15 lineup has been out for about 6 months now at this point, and I keep going back to the iPhone and thinking to myself that there are three big upgrades to the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max that came out this year that really make this, honestly, the greatest iPhone to ever be released, and I want to talk about those. Let's get into it. So this video idea came about because of the fact that my brother a couple days ago had an 11 Pro Max that he dropped and it completely shattered and pretty much made it unusable at that point. So of course he ended up calling me, he went to his local T-Mobile store and he found out that T-Mobile still carried 14 Pro Maxes at a $200 discount compared to the 15 Pro Max. So he called me and let me know, hey, is the 15 Pro Max worth it to get or should I save $200 and just get the 14 Pro Max? In any other year, I probably would have steered him towards the 14 Pro Max. Save your $200. The 14 Pro Max is going to give you 99% of what the 15 Pro Max gives you. The usability is going to be exactly the same. The upgrade from the 11 Pro Max to the 14 Pro Max is still going to be good enough to make you say, wow, I'm holding a brand new product. But the one thing that made me say, actually, it's worth it to spend the $200 and get the 15 Pro Max was the USB-C port. The USB-C port on the iPhone 15 Pro Max has completely changed the way that myself and a bunch of other people use their iPhones in their workflows from a creative, from a professional, from any real standpoint at the end of the day, because that USB-C port has completely opened up what the iPhone can be. So that is the first upgrade from the 14 Pro Max to the 15 Pro Max that really makes the iPhone 15 Pro Max the greatest iPhone that Apple has ever made. Because before the USB-C port, we were stuck with Lightning, we were stuck with USB 2.0 speed, we were stuck with this proprietary cable that Apple made us get into about 10 years ago with the iPhone, I believe it was the 4S or the iPhone 5. And at the time, it was okay, it was kind of nice, it was a reversible power cable that we could use, but USB-C has evolved over the last 10, 15 years to be what it is today. And the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max specifically support USB 3.0 speeds, which completely opens up what the iPhone can do with that USB-C port. So for me personally, I use my iPhone 15 Pro Max to record these A-roll shots, to record a lot of video, to run the YouTube channel, to do all this creative aspects that at the end of the day affects the business. And what I used to do with my iPhone 13 Pro Max and my 14 Pro Max was I would airdrop my footage over to my iPad. Sometimes it worked great, sometimes it was really slow, sometimes I ended up having to reset both devices, so it was a little bit unreliable, and airdrop for the most part is fine when you're kind of just exchanging a few photos and things like that, but when you're trying to transfer larger video files that are anywhere from 2 to 10 gigabytes with one file, it's going to take a lot longer, and there's a lot more room for error when you're using nothing but airdrop. So in steps in USB-C, and it's absolutely amazing. So now what I do is I plug in my USB-C SSD and export all the footage whenever I'm done with it on the iPhone, and then plug that same SSD into my iPad, and I'm working off of that SSD, and within seconds I'm able to have 40 to 50 gigabytes of footage that was on my iPhone and it's now accessible on my iPad Pro or my macOS computer like my MacBook Air. So that alone is enough of a reason for me to upgrade to the 15 Pro Max over any other phone if I'm in that same situation. Now to quickly clarify, yes, iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Plus have a physical USB-C port, but they are limited to 2.0 speed, so it's much slower than the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. You can still transfer data, but it's going to be a little bit slower versus the 3.0 speeds that we get, which are 10 gigabyte per second speeds, which is absolutely amazing. And then another thing to reference is that if you decide to plug in your iPhone directly into your iPad, the iPad will not recognize the iPhone as an external storage device, and that is why I have that intermediary step of using an SSD where I offload the footage from my iPhone to the SSD, and then I plug in the SSD to the iPad when I'm ready to use that footage. So just a couple of things that maybe Apple can fix along the way that you should know about. And then same thing goes with USB-C dongles. You can now plug in pretty much any USB-C dongle you've had for your MacBook Air or any MacBook, as well as your iPad and things like that, and be able to use maybe a USB-C to HDMI dongle, being able to use external SSDs and read those directly and easily from your iPhone itself, and they open up instantly. Everything happens right away, everything happens without lag, which is amazing. And yes, there are some situations where hopefully in the future, Apple adds some Samsung DeX-like capabilities to allow us to use the iPhone as a full-on computer, because the iPhone now with the A17 Pro is more than powerful enough to handle at least web browsing and some kind of Chromebook-like task where you kind of just have like a web book or a netbook that you can just plug into maybe a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard and then have a nice user interface by using the USB-C cable. So at the end of the day, the sky's the limit with the USB-C port, and we were limited so much more with that Lightning cable from years past with these powerful iPhones that were coming, because with the iPhone 12, 13, and 14 Pros, those iPhones were already very powerful, but they were limited because the I/O was just so atrocious with the Lightning cable. Now, this charging speeds didn't change at all. We're still maxing out, I believe, at 25 watts when we're plugged in, and then 15 watts when we're using MagSafe. But again, with the iPhone 16, who's to say that Apple doesn't give us 45 watt fast charging or 60 watt fast charging? That remains yet to be seen. And then finally, one of the most convenient things for most people with that USB-C port is that you can carry one brick with one cable to now charge your MacBook, your iPad, and your iPhone, and your AirPods for that matter. So that is the first reason why I think the iPhone 15 Pro Max, that upgrade to USB-C, has made it one of the best iPhones to date. The next upgrade was the actual new button that Apple created on the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the 15 Pro. So Apple completely removed the silent switcher that we've had for, I believe, since the very beginning, since the first original iPhone. They removed it from the 15 Pro and the Pro Max. They kept it on the regular 15 and the 15 Plus for now. Let's see what they do next year. But they replaced it with the action button. And at first glance, the action button was one of those things that it was kind of like a novelty in the beginning where you kind of played with it for the first few days, then you kind of forgot about it and thought it was a little bit of a gimmicky thing. But then the more you use it and the more that time went on, more utilitarian type of tasks and utilitarian type of products and features were coming to the action button. So first, what I was using it for was just to use the flashlight, and then I used it to open up the camera, and then I used it as a shortcut to open up Twitter. But now I use it as kind of like a shortcut switcher. So I'm able to kind of create multiple buttons within that one button that's easily accessible, whether I'm on my lock screen or my home screen. So basically the action button just gives you a quick physical button to access what you think deems most important for that time or situation. So there's different ways, and the customization of the action button is actually infinite in my opinion. So there's a bunch of Reddit threads and websites and videos of people using their action button in different ways, and I'll link some below. I know Steven Robles has a great one, and maybe we'll make one in the future of how we use our action button. But at first, like I said, the action button was a little bit gimmicky, a little bit more of a honeymoon period. But as time went on, there was actually real use and tangible features that can be added to the action button, which really changed how you use it. So right now, I'm using it as a kind of multitasking app switcher to take me between applications that I want, or quick actions to be able to go from app to app whenever I need to. And now there's two different things that I'm going to add into this final category, which I don't even know what I'm going to call this category, but it involves the camera as well as the new design. So the new design, Apple touted it on the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max, which was the titanium finish and the rounded edges, and honestly, it is a very welcome upgrade because I do remember it being a little bit on the sharper side with the iPhone 13 Pro and 14 Pro Maxes, and the design language came all the way down to the 15 and 15 Plus, at least from the rounded edges standpoint, not the titanium finish. But the titanium finish allowed it to be much lighter in the hand, so now, even though I am using the 15 Pro Max, it's not that heavy, it doesn't feel like a brick in my hand, it's way more comfortable to use in long periods of time. I can take it with me on runs without it kind of weighing down my shorts or anything like that, whereas before, those extra few grams of weight and the sharp edges that it had, even though it looked great from a visual standpoint, Apple was able to keep that same visual kind of beauty of the actual iPhone with those flat edges, but they added a little bit of a curvature so it's not as uncomfortable to hold, which is amazing to have. And also by making those material choices and changing it to the rounded edges and limiting the actual bezel a little bit more, they were able to keep that same 6.7-inch display in a smaller footprint, which again, just makes it so much easier to hold with one hand. And then with that design, we're going to move over to the camera, and the best thing about the camera with the 15 Pro Max, and now this is exclusive to the 15 Pro Max, has to be that 5x telephoto. Whenever I zoom in to 5x, it is amazing to see how clear it is, especially when you have good and proper lighting. You'll see in the B-roll that when I'm slowly zooming in and I go past 1x, past 3x, it does start to pixelate a little bit, it starts to blur, but then the second I go from 4.9x to 5x, it kind of does this shift in the camera, and all of a sudden everything is clear as day, as if I'm using the 1x photo, but I am using the 5x telephoto lens, which is absolutely amazing. So the 5x camera, being able to zoom in like that with such clarity, being able to have such a great shot even from far away, is something that I know a lot of people have enjoyed as just regular users. And I'm not even talking about photographers or people that make a living off of their photos and their videos. I'm just talking about everyday use, like taking a picture of your child like at a playground that's a little bit farther away so you're not having to be super close to them. Or same things when maybe you're at a zoo and you want to zoom into the lion that's a little bit farther away. You get these clear pictures which are absolutely amazing. And I'm just kind of astonished that Apple was able to fit all that into this camera sensor and make it so pristine in such a nice and small package. So to go back to that example of my brother, breaking his iPhone, again, the reason I told him to go with the 15 Pro Max was because of the USB-C port, the cameras, the design, and that action button. And it kind of, at the end of the day, future-proofs him, right? I didn't want him to get the 14 Pro Max and stick with Lightning, because at the end of the day, that is the final generation that we have with Lightning. So he's going to be stuck with Lightning for at least 3 or 4 years, because again, he's more of an average consumer. So most people keep their iPhone for 3 to 5 years before they upgrade, as opposed to us, which we upgrade every 1 to 2 years. So he's going to be holding on to the 15 Pro Max that he has until maybe the iPhone 19. And I didn't want him to be stuck with a 14 Pro Max just because he wanted to save $200, which again, he's splitting up over time. So it was really only like $5 or $6 extra a month that he's paying for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So if you have a loved one or somebody's looking to upgrade their iPhone and they want to save a little bit of money by getting a used 14 or getting a 14 Pro Max or something like that, I highly recommend kind of foregoing that, spending a little bit more and getting a 15 Pro or 15 Pro Max, because that USB-C port alone opens the door to a lot of possibilities. And as of right now, there's still a good amount of things that you can do with it, but looking forward in the future, I believe Apple will add some extra functionality, and third-party developers, both on the hardware and the software side, will be going to be creating some accessories that really take advantage of that USB-C port, and you don't want to be left out by having a 14 Pro Max that you just purchased because you wanted to save a few extra dollars. But that's going to do it for this video, everybody. If you guys have an iPhone 15, let me know in the comments down below how you use it. Is USB-C a game changer like it is for me, for you? Let me know in the comment down below. Curious to know how people are using their 15 Pro Maxes and their 15 Pros and their iPhone 15. And if you have an iPhone 15, do you still use that slower USB-C port for data transfer? Always curious to know. But if you made it to the end, leave a dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And if you guys want to watch some more videos like this one, click on one of these videos right here. But until next time, I'm Fernando. And honestly, I'm just most excited for iPads that should be coming hopefully soon. Peace.